If you think Texas, Indiana, or Oregon is obviously Ohio State's toughest game this season, well, ESPN's Heather Dinich says otherwise, which is incredibly strange considering seemingly all of ESPN and the SEC honks that are out there want to say that the Big Ten doesn't have depth in the middle of the conference, and USC has been the clear middle of the conference team. Has it been a clear middle of the conference team since they joined the Big Ten? USC has not reached the college football playoff under Lincoln Riley. The Trojans are not being picked to win the Big Ten ahead of Ohio State, Oregon, and defending national champs Indiana. Even plenty of USC fans would probably agree that Ohio State is expected to win the game in Los Angeles against USC on October 31st. But let me be clear, as someone who also has a channel where I cover the Big Ten extensively, USC is not Ohio State's toughest game this season. It could be a trap game, it could be a four-quarter fight, and the Buckeyes very well might be making a massive mistake if they treat the Trojans like an automatic win. I don't think they are, but I'm just saying you have to respect this opponent. But ESPN's Heather Dinich calling the Halloween trip to USC the most difficult task of the season is one of the most perplexing Ohio State predictions I've seen this offseason. Not even Bryce Underwood projecting, what he's been saying in his perplexing things, but still very strange out there. And I know what some of you are already thinking. John, USC has a veteran quarterback. It's a cross-country road game. The travel is brutal. There's a brutal 3-game stretch. The Trojans have plenty of talent, and that's all true. That's all true. But none of that explains why USC would be a more difficult test than playing the defending national champs in Indiana, the Hoosiers, on the road, who I know everyone wants to act like they're just going to fall back to earth, but I don't think they will. I think we're going to be seeing Indiana stick around at the top of the conference for at least a few years and be contenders for this year, or facing an Oregon roster that is absolutely loaded with proven NFL talent 7 days later. So in the episode, I'm going to give USC the respect it deserves, explain why Jayden Maiava might be the most underrated quarterback that Ohio State faces this season, and show you why Dinich is overhyping this game. But it still absolutely belongs to the danger list as well. So I'm John Rhodes with the Buckeye Huddle podcast, your home for honest Ohio State analysis without all the toxic noise. Here's what Heather Dinich had to write, and here's kind of what her, makes her piece so confusing for, Ohio State analysis. All offseason, many ESPN analysts and the loudest SEC defenders have told us the same thing about the Big Ten. Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, they're legitimate. They have their respect. Well, Indiana, kind of, if they would schedule differently, right? Then they say there is a significant drop-off, which is fair. Those three are 48-1 against the rest of the Big Ten since 2024. The Big Ten allegedly does not possess the same depth through the middle of the conference as the SEC. I do not believe that is the case personally, but that's a subject for a different podcast. For this one, USC is one of those middle of the conference teams SEC folks and ESPN talk about, right? The Trojans have not reached the college football playoff under Lincoln Riley. They are not being picked ahead of Ohio State, Oregon, or Indiana to win the Big Ten. I've yet to see a media poll or anything like that out there with any type of credibility outside of having those three programs, Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, in the top three of the conference. Even the article surrounding Dinich's prediction acknowledged that USC is not generally expected to win the conference and that Riley has yet to win the biggest games since arriving in Los Angeles. In fact, since Riley got there and arrived in 2022, the Trojans are 0-3 as a home underdog, losing by an average of nearly 10 points per game. So which one is it, right? Does the Big Ten lack depth because the teams like USC are not true contenders, or is the same USC team suddenly the most difficult opponent in the schedule of the nation's preseason number one team in the coaches poll? Both narratives cannot conveniently be used at the same time. This is the kind of stuff about the national media that I just truly cannot stand. ESPN has spent the offseason telling everyone the Big Ten lacks depth, their middle isn't as strong, but Ohio State is elite, Oregon is elite, Indiana defending national champions. But after those three, according according to the national narrative, the conference just completely drops off and doesn't have anybody strong in it. USC has been part of the middle group since joining the Big Ten. The Trojans have not made the playoff under Lincoln Riley. They are not being picked to win the conference. Even many USC fans would probably predict that Ohio State is going to win this game on October 31st. And yet, Heather Dinich just called Ohio State's trip to USC its most difficult task of the entire season. More difficult than playing the defending national champions at Indiana, more difficult than facing Oregon's loaded roster, more difficult than traveling to Texas. That is where the logic just completely falls apart to me. USC can be dangerous, and they should be seen as dangerous. USC can be a trap game. USC can absolutely beat Ohio State if the Buckeyes don't play their best game. But if you believe USC is Ohio State's toughest opponent, then stop telling us the Big Ten has no depth. Stop telling us that the middle of the Big Ten isn't very strong, because the middle has to be strong if that's one of your middle teams and they're the toughest game on the schedule for Ohio State. And if you believe USC is merely a middle tier Big Ten team, explain how that becomes Ohio State's single hardest game. You cannot use both arguments whenever they become convenient for you. And you might say, well, who cares what Heather says, right? We know the schedule's a gauntlet. We know it's going to get some respect. And yes, we do. But Dinich's explanation was almost entirely about the schedule. And going into this year, Ohio State needs to have respect for how difficult their schedule is, because if somehow the Buckeyes do manage to go 9-3, I don't think they will, but if they do, that cannot be an automatic boot for the CFP. Ohio State plays at Indiana on October 17th. The Buckeyes then receive their first bye week before traveling to USC on Halloween. USC will be returning after playing at Wisconsin. So they'll be on the road and then coming back to play at home. Then Ohio State hosts Oregon the week after USC, November 7th. That is a brutal stretch. It may be the toughest 3-game sequence any championship contender faces this season. At Indiana, a bye at USC, and then Oregon at home. The open week is important, but Ohio State will still spend nearly an entire month preparing for the 3 opponents that could all be playoff teams and playoff caliber teams. But here is the problem with Dinich's reasoning. If your argument for USC being the hardest game begins with Ohio State will have to play Indiana on the road, that sounds like a better argument for Indiana being the hardest game, if you ask me. The Hoosiers are the defending national champions. They beat Ohio State last season. Sucks, I know. They get the Buckeyes at home this season. They have a proven coaching system under Kirk Cinetti, with all of their coaches back, except for one position coach who was replaced by a position coach who's been there under Cignetti before for a while. Cignetti and have demonstrated that their roster building model can win at the highest level, even if they don't have elite NFL talent around them. Ohio State will have 2 weeks to prepare for USC. That does not make the travel irrelevant. Flying across the country, playing at the Coliseum should never be dismissed, but the Buckeyes are not flying directly from Bloomington to Los Angeles with no recovery time. They have a bye. That matters too. And this is not last season's Michigan team arriving in Los Angeles. If you remember last season, you remember what happened to them when they went there. They had obvious coaching issues and instability, off-field distractions going on. Yes, USC beat Michigan handily in the Coliseum last year, but the Buckeyes are far better than them. The Ohio State team returns its starting quarterback. They are so much deeper offensively. Their leading rusher, leading receiver, leading passer from last season. It's been, it's an experienced head coach who has operated the playoff environment before, and with coordinators who are both former NFL head coaches. The travel can make the game more difficult. Sure, it cannot become the entire argument of everything you stand for here. Now, let me make sure this does not turn into Buckeye arrogance, right? Because USC is indeed talented enough to beat Ohio State. We all need to admit that. We all need to agree with that, because they are. That's who they are. They are a good, talented team this season. The Trojans may not be a conference favorite, but they have a higher ceiling than the typical middle-of-the-pack Big Ten program does. And the biggest reason is because of Jayden Maiava. I believe Maiava is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in all of college football. He has nearly 30 career starts. He's played at UNLV and USC. He has the natural arm talent Lincoln Riley wants, and he reduced many of the reckless mistakes that previously held him back, showing he can improve year over year. The USC discussion in the attached material, in the material that we've been looking at kind of for a while over at the Big Ten Huddle, entertained Maiava as a possible Heisman candidate and describes him as a possessing first round talent in the NFL if he just keeps on developing. I will go one step further. Entering the season, I'll take Maiava over Arch Manning. I don't think it's too hot of a take, but I could see some people thinking that. That is not a career projection. I'm not saying he's going to be a higher draft pick or that he's going to have a better NFL career. It's just me saying I'd rather have Maiava at QB for me this year than somebody like Manning this year. It is an evaluation of who I trust more right now to operate an offense in major college football games. Maiava has significantly more starting experience. He's already gone through mistakes. He's shown that he can grow and develops. He's adjustments and pressure situations he's been in. He is playing for a coach with a long record of producing elite quarterback play. Arch may ultimately become the better player, sure, but entering the season, Maiava is more proven. He may also create a more difficult individual matchup for Ohio State than maybe Dante Moore or Josh Hoover would because of the combination of his experience, his arm talent, and his mobility, his movement ability that he has. That has been the argument for USC. Not Halloween, not the flight, but Maiava. Jayden Maiava is the most dangerous piece of this USC team when the Buckeyes face them on Halloween night on October 31st. He may be the most underrated quarterback Ohio State plays this season, and entering the year, I would take him over somebody like Arch Manning, like I said. That does not mean that Maiava has the higher long-term ceiling. It does not mean he will become the better NFL quarterback than Arch Manning. It means that right now, Maiava has nearly 30 career starts, has already experienced adversity, and has shown real improvement in his decision-making and his ability on the field. Arch still carries more projection than proof, in my opinion. Maiava has played at UNLV. He has started at USC. He's made mistakes. He's corrected them. He's learned how to operate Lincoln Riley's offense better. And we know Riley's history with quarterbacks. If Maiava takes another step, Ohio State could be facing a future first-round pick and an eventual Heisman finalist in the Coliseum. He may honestly be a more difficult quarterback matchup than Dante Moore or Josh Hoover because he can extend plays and attack the field vertically. USC is not Ohio State's toughest game, but Maiava might be the most dangerous quarterback that Ohio State sees. That's why the Buckeyes cannot treat this like some ordinary middle-of-the-pack conference opponent. This team does have dangerous aspects to them. And on top of Maiava, the second reason they're dangerous is because you have to respect the USC offensive line. The Trojans return substantial experience up front. I believe every single starter is returning from last season. They have continuity at center and experienced left tackle, far more depth than Riley has possessed during much of his USC tenure. And USC fans will tell you they have an advantage when its offensive line faces Ohio State's, rebuilt defensive line. And that's a bit of a stretch for me. I would not go there, but I can see why they have confidence in that. Ohio State has Kenyatta Jackson, Edric Houston, but the Buckeyes are also counting on transfers like Quay Russaw, James Smith, Christian Allegro could possibly take some time down there at the edge. Or Zion Grady, who hasn't played a whole lot. He played some last year. I mean, they need these guys to be immediate difference makers or somebody to step up and be that. The talent is obvious. The completed product is still somewhat wait and see. Can Ohio State stop the run without bringing an extra defender in the box? USC is a much better running team under Wayman Jordan and King Miller back there. Can the Buckeyes generate pressure with four? Can the new defensive line rotation stay disciplined when Maiava starts to escape and try to get out of the pocket? Those questions could make USC uncomfortable, but they still do not make USC the hardest game on the schedule this year. Oregon also possesses high-level offensive offensive talent, a proven quarterback in Dante Moore, and a roster filled with returning players who have performed in major games. Indiana has a proven system, the confidence of a national championship, and home field advantage. USC has possibilities. They have potential, sure, but Indiana and Oregon have the proof. Next is where I believe Dinich's prediction overlooks USC's largest disadvantage in this game. Ohio State has the better coaching structure entering the matchup. Lincoln Riley is an excellent offensive coach, but the overall results at USC have not been what USC fans want exactly. The Trojans have not made the playoff, and they have repeatedly struggled to produce a complete team. They struggle on the road almost every year, and now Riley is pairing his offense with Gary Patterson's defense. And I like Patterson, don't get me wrong. I like Patterson. I think he's going to be a good defensive coordinator for him, but his career deserves respect. His TCU defenses were innovative, aggressive, and consistently capable of maximizing less heralded talent. But we cannot automatically declare a first-year defensive coordinator a home run hire before the defense plays a meaningful game. Patterson has not served as a defensive coordinator in roughly 25 years. He had also been away from full-time coaching for several years. USC is asking him to combine parts of his system with concepts that remained with D'Anton Lynn's defense as well. The results may be excellent. Also may take time for that to happen. Now, fortunately for them, this game is played later in the year, but still, there's a lot of things that we need to explain Patterson's system that can require separate calls in the front, the secondary, creating a more complicated communication structure than USC previously used. And that matters against Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr. can punish one missed coverage assignment. Kyle Parker can come out of the slot. Brandon Ennis should be used back there. Devin McEwen could go over the top. Brock Boyd could go out there and get his. Arthur Smith can use motion and personnel variations to force USC to communicate before the snap. And when Patterson and Arthur Smith are matched up against one another, I'm leaning toward the former NFL head coach who is working with Ohio State's offensive talent. That does not mean that Patterson cannot win the matchup. I'm not discounting him. I'm not saying anything bad about him. It means Patterson does not automatically become the best defensive coordinator on the field or the best coordinator on the field over Arthur Smith because people are familiar with him. We saw another reminder of this with Jim Knowles at Penn State last season. A major coordinator hire can bring a great resume and still experience transition problems when the scheme, personnel, and environment change. Reputation is not always execution. And some of that execution on both sides of the ball last year is gone for USC. They are not like Oregon bringing back all of this talent. They do have talent on the offensive line, Jayden Maiava, but none more are they missing major production from last year than wide receiver. You lose Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane are gone after becoming NFL draft picks. The Trojans have talented replacements, but many of them are young. Their top receiver is expected to be a sophomore. Behind them, USC is leaning on a transfer in multiple freshmen. Those freshmen may eventually become stars. USC signed the nation's top-rated recruiting class and expects several newcomers to contribute immediately. But immediate contribution is not the same thing as immediate consistency. Young players can look explosive one week and then disappear the next. They can dominate a favorable matchup and then they can struggle against the complicated coverages that they see. They can make an incredible coach and later run the wrong route on third down and really just kind of blow it all up, right? USC's receiver corps has enormous future potential, but are very unproven entering the season. By Halloween, those players will be more experienced and will have an opportunity. That's true, but Ohio State should still possess the more proven roster and the advantage in that matchup. This is another reason I cannot place USC above Indiana or Oregon in the toughest opponents for Ohio State this season. And when you see that, when you look at USC's biggest weakness may be its secondary. The Trojans have turnover in the defensive backfield, and Ohio State will bring Jeremiah Smith, Chris Henry Jr., Kyle Parker, name your receiver, and one of the deepest collections of offensive weapons in the country. USC is extremely vulnerable in the secondary, and Ohio State holds a major advantage in the side of the matchup. This is not a minor concern, right? That's why that's giving Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin an awesome opportunity for them to do something amazing. If USC cannot cover Ohio State's receivers without dedicating extra defenders to the secondary, it will cheat favorable rushing opportunities for Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. If Patterson becomes aggressive and brings pressure, Sayin will have one-on-one matchups on the outside. If USC sits back and Arthur Smith can, use the running game and underneath and passing concepts to stay ahead of the chains, Ohio State has the answers they need. USC has to prove it does what it needs to do. So all in all, USC game for Ohio State, well, I would say it's more of a trap game for Ohio State. It's on the road, right? It's on Halloween. It sits between the Indiana and the Oregon game, but you do get a bye before the game there. Jayden Maiava is better than most, national analysts realize, and USC's offensive line can test Ohio State's defensive line, but a trap game is not automatically the toughest game on your schedule. Indiana is the defending national champions. The Hoosiers already beat Indiana and get the Buckeyes at home. Oregon already beat Ohio State. Oregon brings back more proven high-level talent than USC and will arrive in Columbus with championship expectations. USC has a first-year defensive coordinator, a young group of receivers, questions in the secondary, and a head coach who's still not reached the playoffs with the Trojans. That is dangerous. It is not the most complete team Ohio State faces. Heather Dinich's entire argument is largely based on USC coming after the Indiana game. But again, like I said, there's a bye week there that's going to help Ohio State recover after that game. But if the Indiana game is what makes USC most difficult, maybe Indiana is actually your most difficult opponent, I guess Heather Dinich is thinking that way. So here, we do respect USC. We do respect the travel. We do respect Jayden Maiava, but not confuse a potentially tricky schedule spot with Ohio State's biggest challenge on the season. USC has has enough talent to make Ohio State pay for mistakes. Maiava is capable at producing a national statement. The offensive line could control stretches of the game, and the Coliseum will be energized because a victory over Ohio State could completely change the direction of Riley's tenure. The history deserves respect as well. Ohio State has not defeated USC in a regular season game since 1964, and the Buckeyes' last trip to the Coliseum did end 35-3, a loss in 2008. But history is not lining up, with Julian Sayin or Jeremiah Smith or the guys we had. The 2008 Trojans are not walking through that tunnel to the game. This Ohio State roster is more experienced. It's more complete than USC. The Buckeyes have the better receiving room, the better defensive coaching continuity, or really all coaching, fewer positions dependent on immediate freshman impact. Indiana on the road is more difficult because of what the Hoosiers have already proven. Oregon is more difficult because of the veteran talent and the roster depth of the Ducks. USC is dangerous, but only because of what it might become. And I cannot call a team Ohio State's toughest opponent based primarily on a possibility instead of proven production, especially when the argument is doing it so that the Buckeyes will have, just finished playing an even more accomplished team than them. Dinich is right about one thing, though. Ohio State's Indiana, USC, and Oregon stretch could make it or break it for the playoff resume for Ohio State. Going 2-1 would probably keep the Buckeyes in excellent position there. It just kind of depends on what happens. And if they go 3-0, I really don't see a way that they wouldn't make the playoffs if they win all three of those games and clear national title favorites. But the order of difficulty is not complicated to me. Indiana on the road is number 1. Oregon at home is number 2. And USC on the road is either 3 or 4. Texas is right there with them too. And the game most likely to punish Ohio State if it starts believing the rankings instead of expecting the opponent. USC deserves respect. Calling it the most difficult task for Ohio State's season is something entirely different. And I still have no idea how Dinich reached that conclusion, but that's what we got here, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you, and subscribe to the Buckeye Huddle podcast, the Buckeye Huddle YouTube channel here, as we have episodes for you daily at 7 p.m. Sunday through Thursday. Take a break in the weekend, and then we come back. Fall camp starting for the Buckeyes on the 6th. Should be very interesting. We'll have coverage for it and what's going on over there here at the Buckeye Huddle podcast. We appreciate you being here. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.